come up here and make their commitment. Vern sat there beside me. I was holding back my tears, but she beat me to it. She started to cry. We've been at this war, all of us, not just Vern and I, all of you. We've been at this war. Our parents have been at this war. And to finally to hear tribal leaders say what they are saying here is a day we've been waiting for. So those that you don't know that, we've been waiting. The ones before us have been waiting. And when I met NCI, when she came up to Oak Flats and her commitment, and she left on her next journey, my children and I sat there and we just cried, and I told them, I said, I've been going to NCI since I was 22 years old. I said, you guys don't understand what this lady just said. This is what we have been praying for. Someone to be in that capacity, to not to be afraid to say the things that needs to be said. Someone to help train these tribal leaders to know what they're dealing with across this country. It's just not leadership within the reservation, it's leadership within the state and the country. They need to understand and recognize that. But most importantly, they need to understand that they have the responsibility to their people. And the only way that's going to happen is they got to get educated, or either you put in the right people. And I always said one of the big things that the United States made as a mistake was to make tribal governments. But if you ask the question, why didn't this happen a long time ago, it's because there was a transition happening. And our people didn't understand that. You know, when we talk about the language, I can go back to my father. My father only spoke Apache. My mother spoke Apache, Yavapai, Spanish, the Mission Indians, their language, and then picked up Navajo. I used to sit there and say, man, my mom can speak 6 languages. And English was last. But when the tribal governments were formed, those who spoke Apache or didn't speak English weren't hired from the government, tribal governments. And they couldn't even get jobs off the reservation because the first thing they hit them with was, you don't understand English. You don't understand. It was an assimilation plan to break the language. So there was a point there that English came in strong. And it took away that important language. It was a way of breaking the language. So my poor father couldn't work with the tribe and couldn't work outside. So my mother always remembered him coming up the road crying because he had 7 kids. Nobody would hire him. So my poor mom and my poor dad began to work really hard to speak English. And he said, I don't want my children to suffer because this world is terrible. Can't be who we are. So some of my brothers and sisters ahead of me got hurt without really speaking the language. They could hear it and understand it. And before my mom left the world, she used to cry about it. Why did they do this to us? Why? So we were affected in so many ways. But at that point, the people who became tribal government leaders didn't understand. And what irritated me the most is the BIA was a part of capturing all information and making records about us. And yet, they never protected us. Because when I grew up in the 60s, the people were saying, BIA, unseen. Those guys know. We talked to them. They know it. They said they're going to protect us. But little did our people know that the BIA, the Bureau of Indian Affairs, wasn't there for them. And most of you guys remember this with reservations, that always me and my buddy here, Andrew, we grew up with going to Indian Health with them walking around with military uniform. And BIA employees had military uniform. Our parents were afraid to go to these places because we just fought them 30 years ago. And on top of that, we didn't have no rights. Everything had to be approved by BIA. Even though tribal councils were having a meeting and making official business, it didn't mean nothing until BIA signed it. And BIA used to kick a lot of these resolutions back to the tribes, say, hey, fix this. We don't want this and we don't want that, change it. They were tormented. That's why I always laugh when I come back to, when I hear people talk about President Nixon. If it wasn't for that Self-Determination Act that he gave the people, we probably won't even be where we are right now. So when I look at tribal governments, they didn't earn or they didn't exercise their voice until the 1980s, late 80s. They were still trying to figure out. The BIA didn't even come in and help the tribes, didn't educate them about nothing, didn't prepare our kids for nothing of what we were going to encounter. That's why you hear Vernello right now, she's the first. And I call her department the War Department. All these departments that defend the land, the water, the ancestral history is finally was developed at that time. So you can see the struggle of our people if you go back and do a timeline. They trusted these people. And they had to learn this government by themselves with nobody teaching them what it was. But you know, they took it. It wasn't perfect, but they took it. And these are the things that we suffer. When I go to court on Oak Flats, they tell me, well, how come you people in the 1900s didn't say nothing? How come in the 1930s they didn't say nothing? Even to the 50s, how come they didn't even say anything? How come even in the 1970s they didn't say anything? I'm looking at them like, man, the BIA has all that. The universities have all this stuff. But no, they exempt laws. So those information would never be revealed. In the meantime, they continue to assimilate and program our communities. And our children fall prey to that. So if you look back and you do a timeline of where you came from and you dissect the government, it was ugly. It was really ugly. And I'm real grateful to the people of San Carlos when they made me the chairman of the tribe. Because boy, did I go after everything. I wasn't going to let them do that to us anymore. No more. And to know how we couldn't even build our economy because it was already cornered from our neighbors. When Teresa did her class about colonization and capitalism, they were a big part of not letting San Carlos grow. So if you do a timeline and you do a history of your tribe, it's really terrible. So it made me not be upset with my tribal leaders. Then I realized that, oh man, we have a lot of work ahead of us. And again, I go back of how I got elected and why I got elected. And I tell you, as a tribal leader, of how to explain that to your people was a difficult one. And in San Carlos, they were trying to convert us to Christianity. So they actually took a family, and that family is who Vernella and I are a part of, and created a plan because the Apaches weren't converting, and took this huge family that was already prisoners of war, no weapons, no nothing. And the plan was to go in, kill them, and those family members that ran to the church, and those families that ran to the mound, those that ran to the mound would be killed. But those who ran to the church, the preacher would lift the Bible and say to the soldiers, "These are the children of God." And boy, did that convert a lot of people by using those tactics against us. So what else were the people going to do? They were going to convert, not willingly. It was ugly. It was really ugly. And then when the United States was upset with a certain tribe, they went and put those tribes with the scouts and gave free will to the scouts to do whatever they wanted. Because they were upset that some of these tribes defended their rights. This not only happened in the Southwest, it happened everywhere. So now they make these tribal governments put their own assimilated leaders in there to get what they want. Of course, they had to do it because their families would be sacrificed. They would sacrifice their family, and families would never return. Kids were plugged. I'm really grateful for my granddaughters to hug me, but it's really hard for me to hug back. My mother never hugged me. So every time you try to hug her, she goes, and then I start doing that. But I'm so grateful to see my granddaughter and her mom hug each other. But one time I asked my mother, "Why are we that way?" And she cried. She said, "Son, they took us. Any time of the day, they took us. And sent us away. A lot of people never came back." Then I had children, and they took my children too. And she was talking about the relocation program. So in the 60s, the parents were not happy when their kids graduated, because that meant that they were going to be sent to Oakland, Los Angeles, all these places where they sent the kids that now they're finding bodies. But even at that time, they were sent. And two of my sisters never returned. And my mom would cry. So here comes my brother, Dominic's grandfather, the one she's talking about, graduates in 1968. And there was a federal policy change to allow us to stay now, because Arizona allowed Native people to go to colleges based on federal funds. They did it for the money. So I remember my brother Paul having two parties, one for graduating and one being able to stay home and go to school. And I just remember my mother not really being happy yet because she couldn't trust, is this real? So this is how we were raised, with our family traumatized by what happened in this country. So if I know this happened to us, it happened to every Native people in this country. And it's happened to the black people and the white people and everybody else in between. Because it happened to them first. And this is how ugly when we talk about colonization and capitalism. We've come a long way to hear our tribal leaders say what they're saying. We come a long way to see organizations saying what they're saying. We've come a long way with Christians finally saying what they're saying. But it goes back to what Nalini had mentioned about the ancestors before us. And now the children that stand on this earth, what are we going to do? The train has already moved. It's already been on the tracks. But you know what? I will tell you this right now. The train has stopped right here for all of you. Will you get on? Or you will go back to these problems and stay within those problems because that's your safety zone? Or will you come out now to begin to battle the real fight? They say that there's a religious war on the other side of the world. It's here. It's here. How can they say that when they destroyed everything on the other side? This is the last place. This is what our people told us. If anything's going to change in the world, it's here. But we have to wake up. So the train has stopped here. As fast as it's been moving, it's stopping for you. I know I'm Apache, but I'm your brother. I'm your uncle. You're my family. You're my blood. But if you look at me as an Apache up here, and not look at me as a brother, then we have a problem. Because I would never come to the Pasco Yaqui or any of your places and mislead you, misguide you. I would never do that. Because I want to do that to my family. But I'm out here to help you and help me and help this world and help what we're facing. This isn't a summit for me. This isn't a summit or conference for the stronghold. This is a planting of a seed. The seed is already there. We're watering it. This is what the Creator wants us to do. My mother used to tell me, you can hate these people if you want. You're going to hit them if you want, or you can kill them if you want. But is that who you are? You have to remember, before these things came on this side of the world, we were not that kind of people. We were in sync with what God gave the world. We were the keepers. All of us. That's who you are, son. I'm sorry to say that when you walk down that road, they'll call you names by your color, by who you are. They'll spit at you, they'll hit you. But son, she goes, that's not who we are. Let them do it. Let them see themselves in their mirror. But it's going to take that to make changes. And that's why I tell you, if you're on the spiritual road, you have to be strong. But know that the energy comes from all this creation that God created the mother to be. So always understand that. So for some reason, I became the chair. Now all of you from reservations know, I don't come from a big family. I come from a family that was brought in as a prisoner of war. We're not scouts. We're prisoners of war. In 2005, when I got elected as chairman, it was the first time for us on the other side that were prisoners became the leader of the St. Carlos Apaches. Because even in our government, the Scouts held the leadership. And that lived in us. But my good friend here, Andrew, and myself started battling this when we were young. That no, we're relatives. You know, our Scouts got used by the United States because if anything, they all should have been living in Sedona with all the nice places. But no, they lived in San Carlos with me and with Andrew. And I remind them what Geronimo said. Who are you going to stand with now? And I'm so happy my brother, man who grew up with me, you know, all the way making these changes to show that we need one voice, one people. And if it can work in San Carlos, it can work anywhere. That's my point. A very diverse people hit by Scouts and prisoners to come together and to hear the vice chairman speak here, to hear the chairman of our tribe to continue. He told you. So we can break down those barriers. It could be broke down anywhere. I think it's important because I know your stories are equal to mine. But it's not to be afraid. Crying doesn't mean you're weak. Crying means healing. It pushes me to the next. Pushes me to the next. And that's why I say that we all have to be the same, because if Resolution Copper, the mining, you know, I've been shot at already. I don't tell anybody. I ran for my life in Jakarta, Indonesia, when the United States abandoned me. I mean, we could tell you all these horrifying stories that I went through. But it was all about learning that this world isn't what it is. This American dream that they talk about isn't an American dream. It's a colonized capitalist dream they're teaching you. So we have to wake up. We have to play a bigger part. Don't be afraid, because I even had the Pope try to challenge me with his highest cardinal, and we won that argument.
Yay.
They actually came to me to debate the religion. They had a really nice cardinal head. I mean, thought he took it from my room, the curtains. It was really nice. There was about 800 people in a room, cameras like crazy. And he actually came to debate me. So of course, he started, it was in Italy. Then when it was my turn, I sat there and the translator looked at me like crazy, because what I was saying was, I'm not here for a debate. I didn't come here to debate their religion. I was never taught to do that, and I will not do that. So after he made a long speech, he stormed out. And I don't know if you guys have been around Italians, but man, they like bees after that. All upset. So finally, one man got up and said to me, I only have one question. For Indian people, and for us, if a man was disobedient and did everything wrong, and he got in a car accident, and he had 3 minutes before he would die, and says, oh Jesus, God, forgive me for all my sins. Forgive me. Do you know that Jesus and God will forgive his sins? What about you Indians? And again, I wasn't there to debate him. But in return to the whole crowd, I told them, man, that sounds like a bad little boy. Terrible guy. Had bad parents, I guess. And that's what I left them with. Then I come here at Oak Flats. And I get the Lutheran church from Mesa, the preacher that controls that, comes up to see me with his congregation, some of his congregation. And he actually tried to convert me at Oak Flats. So I sat there for almost 2 hours listening to him. And he said to me, almost the same thing that guy said, was he said, in our good book, we can go and do as bad as we want. Do you know that the people up here, the mining people that you disagree with, they can do everything they want. But do you know that when you die and they die, you're both going to be at the pearly gates? Do you know that? And I'm looking at him, thinking to myself, wow. And I'm sure glad I had my mother, because my mother is over here talking to me in my head. This is the time, son. Here it is. Let it go. Let it go, you know? And I'm sitting there, I'm like, okay. I said, I'm not here to debate your good book. I said, but my mother tells me to tell you this. And I said, you're forgetting something very important that God created. God created a mother. And I sat here for 2 hours listening to you, and you used the example of a mother and father, only man, only woman. I mean, I listened to you all the way through. I said, well, what you're leaving out is that our Mother Earth. And I'm going to give you the example that when a child misbehaves and the father is gone, the mother gets the child and say, hey, you didn't behave. You sit right here and you're not going anywhere. You're not going anywhere. The father comes home and is really happy to see the son and says, hey, son, come on, let's go. So the son gets up, and who says, wait, you're not going anywhere. You're going to stay right here. And he looks at the father and says, your son misbehaved. He's not going anywhere until I say so. He's got to learn. And what does the father say? Oh, okay, hey, son, you better listen to your mother. And the father walks away. I said, my point is that you better start teaching your congregation about Mother Earth. Because our body goes back to the earth. And our soul does go to a sacred place. But our body goes back to our mother. That's why it was so important that when my mother passed, she did not want to be in a casket. And she told me, she said, son, it's like when a mother loses a child and the child never comes home, the mother is never the same. Will never be the same. But even if the child came back, the mother can put that child away. Even though it hurts, even though it's the worst hurt you can feel, she can put the child away. But if that child never comes back, no matter how old they are, if something happens, the mother will never be the same. So please do not put me in a casket. Because I want the mother to know I came home. These people make these caskets for money. They're looking for themselves. They scare everybody. But she says, son, you got to remember Mother Earth. And I told him all of that. He got up, walked around, walked back to his van, came back to his little group and said, hey, we got to go, let's go. And as everybody was leaving me, kept piling away and walking away, I always remember the son-in-law coming to me, and I said, oh God, he's coming to me. And then he says, thank you, Mr. Nosey. So, nobody's ever told my dad, my father-in-law that. And his daughter came back couple of days and brought food for me at Oak Flats. And she goes, thank you, Mr. Nosey. She goes, I don't know why it's the way it is, but we disagree. Even though that's my father, I'm Lutheran, but I disagree. She's like, my father will never be the same after he's talked to you. And since that time, he came back. One time, didn't say much, but brought me some food. So he didn't convert me, but I converted him. I guess in ending, so that we can end with the prayer and the songs, I really want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank the speakers, the cooks, the leaderships that came, and you, personally you. I want to thank you and everything that has gone into this. And I want to thank the people who are gone, who we have lost. Not just us, but all of us in here. Because they were the shining light and the example for us to follow. We can never forget them for what they've done for us. And those who are past, it keeps me motivated to keep going. And like Nalin said, for those young ones, it keeps me motivated to keep fighting. And I'm just glad my brother gave me all this advice, because now I can meet somebody like you, the leaders, everybody, you people. But, on March 20, 2023 is our hearing in Los Angeles at Pasadena. So as soon as this is over and I get back to Oak Flats, give me like 2 to 3 days, I'm going to work to try to pull the biggest gathering on the religious belief for all of us in Los Angeles. So I'm going to really, really need your help. And I'm so happy with some of the other agencies coming forward to bring their people. And I was even told that if it gets so huge, they'll look at getting the Dodger Stadium. But I just got another word that we could use, some university stadiums. And it's just awesome. Things are already clicking right now. And like I said, this is the real war in keeping Mother Earth alive. Because believe me, the other side of the world, and we've been there, they don't have the opportunity to do what we can do here in America. You need to understand that. Don't let these politicians and the media tell you that that's the real religious war. No, it's here, and we can all help the people across this world if us Native people pull together with all the people, because the people before us have the experience of what's evil in this world. So let's rise, let's be who we are, and let's bring the best part of us out in why God made us to be who we are. So I'll leave you with that, and thank you so much. And now we come to the closing part of our summit. Thank you very much.
So before we ask the guys to come up to share some songs, can we kind of gather as much as we can for a picture? I'm going to attempt a selfie. If not, I'm going to take a picture of all your beautiful faces. Okay? Oh yeah, we're going to do the Oak Flats, so that's your left arm. All right.